on the News Channel 5 network. This is MorningLine with Nick Beres.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here with you. We've got a good show on tap this Wednesday. We're going to be talking politics with our guest, specifically some of the developments that have just happened overnight and what's happening within the Republican and Democrat parties and some of these key challenging races. Is there trouble for the Republicans coming up on these midterms, because we've had some special elections with some races both here in Tennessee and a biggie up in Pennsylvania we'll get into, and some of the other issues as well. We'll talk about some of the other key races here in Tennessee. You're welcome to join in the conversation. Give us your take, if you're taking the temperature of what the voters thinking right now. 737-7587 is the number, and we're going to be talking about it. Political science professor, all-around good egg from MTSU, John Weil. Professor, good to have you.
Good to be here.
Before we get into all the politics,
yes,
let's talk
basketball.
Blue Raider basketball. All right, look, I'm with you. The Blue Raiders, they blew it when they lost in the tournament, and I mean in their conference tournament, and that cost them. But I know they are one of the top teams in the country and should have been in the tournament ahead of some team like Oklahoma.
Agreed.
And they proved it last night.
91-64,
blowing away Vermont.
Yep.
And so what I take from that is certainly they were let down, right? Not getting into the big dance.
Don't give up.
This team's well coached, and they don't. Oh well, if we're not in the tournament, we're not going to try.
No.
They went out and
they
blasted a good
and there was a
team.
pretty good crowd there last night.
Good crowd.
Yeah.
Is that good? That was here.
Yes,
that's right. That's what I thought.
Now,
and
next one, I think we have to go up to Louisville.
So did Louisville win? Did they pull it off last night? Yeah, but you can go up and beat Louisville.
Oh, of course we can.
So were you
UVA did it with 1.8 seconds left and 4 points behind, so it can be done.
Happen. Gosh, that was crazy. You know your basketball.
Well, a little bit.
All I can say is I was sorry to see that, because that was such a great story. What was it, 2 years ago when they beat Michigan State in the tournament? 2 or 3 years? 2 years ago.
I believe it was 2.
Yeah, and what a great story. And Herman Davis does a great job there. I just hope you guys can keep him as a coach.
I hope so,
He's had a run of 3 good years. You got to figure other teams might look for him. But anyway, got that out of the way. Let's talk real quick. You said you stayed up late last night watching what?
Well, mostly the Pennsylvania election.
Yeah. Talk about why that's important. What's the big deal there?
Well, the importance is it's an area. It's sort of coal company. It's southwestern Pennsylvania. Very borders on West Virginia. Trump had won that area, carried it by about 20 points. Romney, the election before, he carried it by about 16 points. And all of a sudden, it appeared to be, pretty much nip and tuck. I mean,
this was such
and it still is.
It's so Republican that I mean, there were times where Democrats didn't even bother running.
No, that's right. That's right. And I, last night, this is the political scientist's dream, which is every vote counts, and I'm 755 somewhere along in there out of over 200,000 votes. It seemed to be the difference, and now it's going to be probably the
write-ins.
The write-ins, which they're still counting.
Yeah, and I heard initially I thought the write-ins might help. The Republican is Rick Saccone, and the Democrat's Connor Lamb. And Connor Lamb took a big early lead, and then it closed. And at one point,
Trump actually went up there to campaign for.
Oh no, but I mean during last night when they were counting the ballots.
Oh yes.
Trump went up twice. His son went up. I mean, they spent. Here's the thing: even if somehow the Republicans do find a way to, and Connor Lamb's already claiming victory, but the Republican is not conceded yet. Even if the Republican somehow does win this still, the mere fact that it's this close in what has been traditionally a stronghold. This isn't one of those wishy-washy, well, the Republicans kind of had it, but it can go either way. This is a stronghold. It's still going to be a victory for the Democrats, but to finally win a seat outright is an even bigger deal, don't you think, for the Democrats?
Well, I mean, it somewhat mirrors what happened in Alabama in the Senate race.
Yeah, but that candidate was such a total idiot.
You had a very flawed candidate. You did.
I mean, I don't think Saccone's anything like.
No, I don't either.
That candidate. Well, you're right, though. It does mirror it, but that candidate down there was just god-awful.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just call it like it is. That guy. Now what's he doing? He's putting out money, trying to raise money to pay for his legal defense.
Yes.
I mean, that's just awful.
Now, we should mention in Murfreesboro there was an election last night that went, I guess you'd say, in Trump's favor. And Shane Reeves almost 2-1 over the Democrat.
Yep.
So, they used to say all politics is local. and we've almost reversed it. It's almost like now every time there's a local election, we do what the British did with their by-elections. You know, we try to read the tea leaves. You know, of course, in Britain, it's whoever gets the majority in Parliament, and you can actually unseat a prime minister through these by-elections. Here, you can't do that. But these, you know, these are the best tea leaves we probably have in regard to what's going to happen in November, you know, in the House and Senate elections. So.
I think you're right. And I'm trying to read into what this means up in Pennsylvania if the Democrats hold there. And I was reading some of the headlines this morning where they were saying, okay, I mean, you know, Donald Trump has a very strong still core of support, but they were saying it's the suburban areas.
They did.
Outside, the families in the suburban areas, many of whom maybe did vote for Donald Trump for president, but now, you know, this time into it, they're like, well, you know, and I think many of them, I'm getting the sense, voted for Donald Trump, not so much because they were thrilled with him,
right,
but because they couldn't stand Hillary Clinton.
Well, and what's interesting is Lamb ran against Pelosi.
Yeah.
And really did not, I mean, obviously he stressed that he was a Democrat, but he did not openly run against Trump. He's just sort of said, right, that's irrelevant. And, you know, he had, what, military record, former prosecutor.
Right.
I think it indicates that, you know, well, I think it's sort of a healthy sign, and I'd say the same if it went the other direction, that either party, if they have the right candidate with the right message at the right place, has a chance of winning.
Yeah, and when you said not running against Trump, I don't want to break away too quickly from the Pennsylvania thing, because I think that's interesting to talk about, but Bredesen is now running ads where he's clearly saying, I'm not running against Donald Trump. He's our president. And so they're kind of taking the same page. I think most Democrats...
and Diane Black is doing something similar. I'm proud to have worked with the president.
But I didn't do it for him.
Right, I did it for her. Yeah,
you see these ads coming out. I didn't do it. Yeah, and so it seems to me like, you know, with Donald Trump and his supporters, if you want to run as a Democrat in some of these Republican strongholds, you've got to be moderate. Okay, obviously no one who's a Pelosi-type Democrat is going to have any shot. But and there are moderate Democrats, and there are moderate Republicans. And so
through most of our history, that both parties have been, you know, it's more recent that they've both sort of veered off in the
to the extremes.
Corners.
But in Tennessee, we're Republican. But for someone like Phil Bredesen, who has his background, he's running against a strong Republican candidate, Marsha Blackburn. But he's moderate, and so he would have a chance in a race, especially with his background, being moderate, I think. And that's what he's pushing. He's saying, I'm not running against Donald Trump. I'm going to do what's best for our state, whether it's a Trump proposal or otherwise.
And actually, you know, there was a little bit of pushback against Blackburn in people saying, well, Republicans from Tennessee are traditionally, you know, the Howard Bakers of the world, the Alexanders, the people in the middle, and do we want to push a Republican that's a little, you know, farther off in one direction or another? So we'll see.
Well, that's right. And I don't know if what do you think the candidates in Tennessee are thinking, especially Democrat candidates, seeing after last night in Pennsylvania? What are they thinking? Can there be any translation?
Well, I mean,
Tennessee's a different place.
I think one thing that both parties are learning is you have to contest every seat. You know, there's so many House districts that basically, you know, go uncontested. Yeah. And you do need to pay attention. You know, you don't always just need to reward the person who's been most faithful to the party. There may be somebody up and coming with, you know, with a little bit more energy, a little bit different approach. Military record helps, these kind of things, you know, that can make some headway.
Yeah, and I think I was reading where Lamb raised almost 3 times as much money as Saccone in Pennsylvania. I mean,
well, Saccone had a lot of Republican money. I mean, the National Committee spent about $10 million.
Well, didn't both committees really pour it in and then separate fundraising?
They did, but that's true. Saccone was not a particularly effective fundraiser at all.
Yeah, I saw some of the things he said in that last days, or yesterday or whatever. He really went off about some of the things on the Democrats that came out.
Right.
He was getting desperate there, you know. And well, we'll see how things work out. That's still not a closed race, then, is it yet?
Not to my knowledge.
I don't know what triggers a recount, but it's hard to imagine. But it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, 200,000.
Almost a million votes. Or how many votes?
No, I think it's about 200,000.
Oh, it's only 200.
Yeah,
out of 200,000 votes, they're still separated by less than 1,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a break on that note. Phone line's open, 737-7587. We can talk about that. We can talk about some of the other things happening as well at the national level. North Korea, the discussions there, of course, what happened to Tillerson, the Secretary of State. And, guns in schools. Today's going to be the big walkout around the country in schools. And the question, the president pushing arming teachers. We can get into some of that and whether that's going to be something that's more of a campaign issue.
Let's not forget that.
Yeah, he saw me. He walked in and we had a big pie.
Now, we have some in the Honors College, too. So.
All right. We'll take a break. We'll be back with your phone calls and more of our conversation with Professor Weil right after this.